Hello, everyone. It is Friday. I hope you guys have had an amazing week so far. I am actually just coming on here a little bit different. Hold on, I'm just checking myself on my phone so that you guys have access to ask me any questions or make any comments as I'm going along today. So today is going to be a little bit different. Every Friday, I've been coming to you with my podcast episode with a guest. And this week, I've had some scheduling conflicts that left me completely free. That being said, I wanted to welcome you guys to Coaching Connections, where this is a podcast where we talk about health, wellness, and everything in between. Ultimately, the goal of my show is to bring together health and wellness as an integrative practice for our well being, like the spokes of a wheel. There's so many different practitioners. There's so many different ways to take an approach to your health and your wellness journey. And my goal with this is to reach out and give you some opportunity. Today, like I said, is going to be a little bit of a different episode. Today, I'm going to be going into my story, a little bit about who I am, what I do now, but where did I come from, and how did I come into working in the health and wellness industry. I also want to talk about burnout and depression. We don't spend enough time talking about mental health and how it comes about in our lives. Because, a lot of the times we've talked about genetics, but we haven't really touched too much about the things that we have going on in our lives. So there's a genetic disposition to depression and anxiety disorders, but there are also conditions in our environmental factor that actually lead to it. So I think with that being said, I will give you a little bit of a rundown of who I am. So for those of you who don't know me, and this is the first time that you're checking in, my name is Crystal Buran. I am the host of Crystal Coaching Connections. I am a health and wellness coach, and I'm also a certified natural therapist. I specialize in working with men and women to overcome stress and burnout naturally, to help them reclaim their confidence and essentially stress less. My goal is to help you make small and sustainable steps in your everyday life to basically create a long-term gain. So that's what I do. I meet clients one-on-one, and I do group coaching, and I also give health and wellness workshops. So there's actually one coming up this weekend. So I hope you can join me. Let me know if you have any questions about it. I will be talking, like I said today, a little bit about my story. So I'm just going to start. I just turned 40 years old this year. And I have to say that this last year of my life has been the first year that I can say that I've been living my life in the most authentic manner possible. I spent much of my life chasing that dream that we all have of, climbing the corporate ladder and thinking and doing and thinking that we have to do certain things in order to be successful in life. And ultimately, a lot of the times we spend so much time focusing on what we think we should be doing and forgetting about who we actually are deep down inside and what's important to us. So a little bit about me. I started working in the corporate banking world in 2003. My God, it's almost 20 years. I started working in the corporate banking world in 2003. I started at the bottom of the scale. I was a customer service rep. I wouldn't say the bottom of the scale, but like for me, when I started, I was just like, okay, I want to be the big boss. So where do we got to start? I started as a customer service representative, and I worked my way up through the ranks. I was a very determined perfectionist person, A-type personality, full of energy and willingness and eagerness to please. My goal was to make sure that people knew who I was and how I can actually get the job done faster and better than everybody else. And this comes from a long line of being a perfectionist myself. So I call myself now a recovering perfectionist, which is actually something that I'm still going to have to continue to work on for the rest of my life. But it's not something that I'm not proud of. I think it's super important that we learn more and more about ourselves as we get older. And one of the things that I learned was that there were a lot of things that happened in my life that made me who I was as an adult. And created a lot of beliefs in myself and limiting ones as well, um, to basically, push me on that road to where I was. So, all this to say, I was always a really hard worker, eager to please. I pushed the envelope on everything that I did. Um, but in the long run, I was doing this because, of circumstances in my life. I grew up, don't get me wrong, I had a beautiful family. I have amazing parents. So my mom is a super amazing woman. I lost my father when I was 25, but he was an amazing man. Circumstances in our life left us in a single family home at the age of 11 years old. And uh life changed significantly. It changed drastically. And I think that for anybody that goes through a significant trauma in their lives, we do our best to adapt to the things that are happening. And my way of adapting was, one, being a little bit of a rebellious child. I did everything that I wasn't supposed to do. I went the opposite direction when everybody was going in the right direction. I pushed against authority. I did absolutely everything that I could to really push against the societal norms of what, I was supposed to be doing. So when it came to going to school, I, finished high school, but I was like, I'm going to get a job. I was already working. I've been working since I was 13, by the way. Um, but I was going to get a full-time job because I needed to put a roof over my head because I was living on my own, rather young. And that was that was a decision of mine based on, circumstances that happened. And so I didn't go to school the same way that, maybe some people traditionally did, where they finished high school and they went to college and then they went to university. So I did some college, I did some university, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do with myself. And the banking industry seemed like a good option because I loved, working with people. I loved helping people, and I really thought that that was going to be what I wanted to do. I had a great career. I worked really hard. I spent a lot of time, working up that ladder. And when I turned 25, I lost my father. And I kind of went through, I guess, what you want to call my first version of a burnout. I didn't know it was a burnout at the time. I became really sick. I started to gain weight uncontrollably. I started to, I had a lot of breakouts. I gained weight. I was having hormonal issues. I had difficulties. I was just not physically healthy. Things just kept feeling wrong, especially when in a time, I was 25 when I quit smoking, and I thought that this was probably the best thing for myself. Unfortunately, at the time, because of the stress that I was going through with work and the pressures that I was putting myself, and losing my father, it put me in a pretty bad place. And I will just say that I became the product of my job. And I was my job. I wasn't Crystal. I wasn't who I am today, where I have passions and I have dreams and I have goals in my life. And, I am not just Crystal, the health coach. I'm Crystal. That's a great friend. I'm a great aunt. I enjoy taking time by myself. I love my family. I box. I wasn't Crystal with all of the passion. I was Crystal, who was the assistant branch manager at the age of 25 at the Bank of Montreal. And, it was crazy, because I was one of the youngest at the time, assistant branch managers in the banking industry. And I was super proud to get there. But the pressure that it puts on you, and that I put on myself, I was no longer Crystal. I was Crystal, who was the assistant branch manager. And I lived that for a pretty long time. Now, when we talk about depression and burnout, I didn't know what it was at the time. I remember having a pretty big crash. I made a mistake at work, and this is one of the things that I'll let you know, that when you're going into burnout and you're not doing things in the right way, you're going to start making a lot of mistakes. And I made what was called a so-called mistake. I didn't believe it was a mistake. Some of my bosses didn't believe it was a mistake, but unfortunately, it called me out in a light that I was not used to being seen in. As I said, I was a perfectionist, and I was used to being seen up here. I was kind of, not only was I putting myself on a pedestal, I had put myself in a position where others put me on a pedestal, and so what was perceived as a mistake ended up basically costing me my reputation. First eye-opening experience. I remember being sick to my stomach. I remember being super depressed. I remember going into a church and crying for hours on my lunch hour, and going back to work and not knowing what the heck the next steps were. That was the first time I saw a doctor. And the first time I saw a doctor, I didn't know he was an integrative doc, but he prescribed me yoga. I was super pissed off. My husband was super pissed off. He's like, my wife is going crazy. She needs help. She needs time off work. And literally the only thing that I got was like, you need to relax. Now, tell somebody to relax when they don't feel relaxed is a really, really difficult thing to hear. And so I just kept pushing on. And instead of me taking focus and spending time really evaluating what I needed to do to really get myself better, I ran away from it. I took a 2-week vacation. When I came back from vacation, I decided that I wanted to buy a house outside of the city because I knew that I didn't want to live in the city forever. So it was here where I started to realize, what was important to me. Family was important, and that it wasn't so much my job. But I did it in the wrong way. I literally, within 24 hours, visited a home, put an offer in a home, and the home was accepted. An hour and 15 minutes out of the city of Montreal. I had no job to fall back on. I hadn't had the ability to look for any other jobs outside of the area where I was in. I just did it. It turned out for the good. I ended up staying with the bank that I was with, and I changed locations. Again, things changed, but they didn't change. So I changed locations, I changed my home, I changed my environment, but I actually didn't change inside of myself, and I didn't change the outlook or the beliefs that I had about myself. And so I spent the next, let's say I was 25 at the time, and I left the banking industry in 2017, in November 2017. So I spent, a good 12 years continuing to do the same thing. And constantly every couple of years having the same kind of crash and burn reality where I would have no choice but to change of jobs because I needed something new to be able to hold me through. So coming to 2017, I had been working as a project manager and change manager for the company that I was working for. And I was traveling across the country. I had a brilliant job. I was actually working in changing people's lives differently. So it was in the banking world where, I was teaching people. And so I was educating, and, I thought it was what I wanted to do. And I'm very organized and I love to teach people. But again, my personality and the bad habits that I had were putting me at jeopardy again. And essentially, by November 1st, 2017, I was at the worst part I've ever been in my life, full-fledged, all-out burnout, where I went into my doctor's office and I cried for an hour. No words came out of my mouth. I couldn't believe that I was feeling the way that I was feeling. I had no words. I was choked. I still feel it to this day when I get emotional because I never thought that I would be where I was that day. And had I learned more about mental health and taking care of myself, I don't think that I would have come to that point. Now, hindsight is 2020. What I do now is because of that, and it kind of allowed me to be able to grow into who I am today. So I will never take away that pain, because I think that it's what propelled me forward. The fear propelled me forward. But for me, it was career suicide. And it's crazy because I had to take time off work. I took almost a year off of work. And I was lucky enough to be working for a rather large institution where I had really good insurances and really good benefits, and I was allowed the time to be able to get the therapy that I needed. But I spent a good 6 to 8 months in therapy, in weekly sessions with a psychologist. I spent time doing work with with yoga, through breath work. I spent time trying to figure out who I really was and how I was going to go and change my way of doing things. Now, again, although I went through this crazy eye-opening experience of having the burnout, I still did the same thing. Essentially, I left the bank and I changed jobs. And when I changed jobs, I decided that I no longer wanted to be the way that I was. And so I kind of pushed completely to the other end of the spectrum, similarly to what I had done when I was a teenager. I wanted no responsibility. I really wanted to use the skills that I had, but I wanted to clock in at 9 to 5. I wanted to be good between the hours that I was working on, but I wanted to give myself realistic expectations. I didn't want to have goals. I didn't want to have dreams. A lot of things had changed for me. So I kind of, again, I didn't really do the right right thing. Um, and this is why I do what I do now, because had I known what I know now, I would have gone out and I would have gotten myself a coach. And I would have learned. So I did have a coach, but it was for something completely different. About 5 years before my burnout, it was about hormones, and unfortunately, I didn't put the connection together. That hormones and stress and anxiety and all of those things and depression, they all go hand in hand together. So I wish I would have put it together, which is why now I do what I do. Um, so just doing that 360 and looking back again, I started working in real estate. I did a year in real estate. I became an executive assistant. I enjoyed what I was doing because I was helping. I felt like I was helping. I felt like I was able to be a great part of the team. But there was something that was inside of me that was just still telling me that, Crystal, you are not in the right place. And it had been so long since I'd listened to my intuition, probably before I was 11 years old. Um, I'd stopped listening to it before that, right? I stopped listening to it when everything felt like it crashed and burned. And, you know, something kept telling me in this last year in 2018 that something's not right, something, you're not doing something right. And I felt it in my body, I felt it in my bones, I felt it in my health. I was still not, my healthiest. I had a hard time losing weight. I was not, even though I ate well and I worked out, I was not achieving the goals that I had set for myself. um, and so again, I was still not in my authentic place. And then finally in when was it? 2019. 2019, I left the real estate agency that I was working with, and I decided that I had no fallback action, but I needed to figure it out. I had to stop doing what I was doing, and I had to force myself to being uncomfortable. I had to have that fear of not knowing, and that's literally I quit my job, and within 48 hours, my body ha- rejected me, I guess, maybe that, I guess you want to call it that. I ended up extremely sick. I ended up having extreme abdominal pain. I was rushed to the hospital. All this to say, I had to have an emergency surgery to have a benign tumor removed from my intestine. And if I really look at the timeline of the way things happened, I kind of look at it as this was kind of my body expelling everything from my body, all of the negativity, all of the past beliefs of myself, all of the past ways that I was trying to, be somebody who I was not. And then finally, when I released that, my body was able to release all of the negative stuff that ended up in that tumor. So I call my tumor like it was my it was my rebirth. um, because I was off, I was able to spend a lot of time. Although I was afraid, I'd never not had a job in my life since I was like 12 or 13 years old. It allowed me the time to, one, recover from surgery, two, really look at what my life was doing and what did I want to be. And so in that reflective time, when you start to be in reflection mode and you start to really look into yourself, the answers will come to you. And so for me, they came into, the reflection on, what do I want to do with my life? What did I always want to do? So I wanted to be a doctor when I was a kid. I used to go around telling people, "Hi, my name is Crystal. What's your name? I want to be a doctor, and I want to be a dancer, and I want to be a politician." And it was funny. My parents like literally thought it was the most hilarious thing because, I was probably 2 or 3 years old talking to people and telling them what I wanted to be when I was an adult. And clearly, I did not become a doctor, and I wasn't a dancer, and all of the dreams and all of the hopes and dreams that I had had for myself as a child, I had put them on the side because of what I thought I had to do to be able to survive life. And you know what? Life is not about surviving. I think we need to make a real clear distinction there. Life is about living and loving and being true to who you are. And once we start doing that, we really start opening ourselves up for abundance. And I was never like this woo woo person. Like, I was very logical. I'm still pretty logical, but I do believe in divine intervention. I believe that, there's something out there for each person, and when you are living that authentic life, things are going to start to align. So next thing you know, when I finally decided, I was like, okay, well, how am I going to be a doctor again, or how am I going to be a dancer? How can I do these things that I thought I was never going to be able to do? um, Poof, Google listened to me, and a Zumba training program popped up with that was starting the week later. So I hit the yes button and I signed up for it. And literally less than 24 hours after that, poof, it popped up that there was the Institute for Integrated Nutrition that was teaching all about health and wellness and how to become a coach to teach people how to take care of themselves. And I was like, how is this happening to me? But you know what? I let it happen. I allowed it to come into my life, and I allowed that divine intervention to happen because I opened myself up to who I really was. So enough of the woo woo. I'm glad that I was able to tell a little bit of my story. I'm sure that I could spend tons of more time, and if ever you want, I can spend more time having a conversation with you one on one about how I overcame some of the things that I overcame. But what I want to talk about now is burnout and mental health and depression, and how there's still a huge stigma around it. Like I said, I said it earlier, for me, it was career suicide. Unfortunately, I chalk it up to, had I had a serious illness, I feel like I would have been better off than having to go back to work and tell them that I had a mental health issue. When I went back to work, I wanted to be honest about what had happened to me. I wanted to be authentic about what had happened to me. And unfortunately, it put me in a position where I don't know whether it was me feeling that way or whether it was the truth. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it very neutral there because, you know, um, I could have still been in a really bad place, but I did not feel that my mental health breakdown was something that was well respected in or even talked about in the community. And so for me, you know, I wanted to make that a point of where I was going to help people, you know. So that's what I do now. So let's talk about burnout a little bit. Burnout can be very different from one person to the next. It does not affect everybody in the same way, and everybody has a really different breaking point. Clearly, my breaking point was maybe a little bit longer than somebody else's, but maybe it was not as long as somebody else's. Again, each one of us, you know, the things that we've gone through in life, the beliefs that we have, the structure that we have in our lives, that all promotes or hinders, you know, what's going to happen and how your body is going to act, and whether you are going to be somebody that's going to be prone to a burnout. So burnout is the result of long-term stress that hasn't been addressed. So let's talk about the stress that I underwent when I was 11 or 12 years old when my family split up, right? That was something that was probably very pivotal in my life. I know it is. We're not going to go in there. But it was something that like propelled me into stress mode. And it's not just in relation to work. This is relation to life. It could be personal stress. It could be recurring stress. It could be long-term stress. It could be short bursts of stress. It could be stress in relation to other people's in our lives. It doesn't necessarily have to be with work. So mine happened with work, and it also happened with my personal life. And so I think that it's very important to note that like when somebody does go on a burnout, it is not necessarily a burnout from their work, but it's also a burnout from, you know, the things that are happening in their personal lives. What are the symptoms? Burnout comes in many forms again, but you know, lack of motivation, a lack of energy, being tired all the time, detachment from others. I know that as a very social person, I started to detach myself from the family visits. And, you know, even when I was with my family or the people that I loved and cared about, I wasn't as outgoing as I usually was. I would sit back and I would let the world happen around me as opposed to me being involved in the world. You can have sicknesses, like I said, physical symptoms, hormonal issues, weight gain, weight loss, acne. There are tons and tons of things that can happen to your body. Basically, your immune system becomes compromised. And so, you can have everything from digestive issues to heart problems to it's crazy what stress is going to do to your body. And like I said, it can come anytime from anywhere. And the symptoms can be very different from one person to the next. So it's very important that you know to start to feel and understand what your symptoms of burnout might be. All right. So there are 5 steps approximately in a burnout. And what I want to talk about, I want you guys to know that like you could be at any point in any of these steps at any period of your life. You can go up to step 5, to step back to step 3, back to step 4, or you can stay in step 1. The goal is to stay in step 1 because stress is normal. Nobody said that's why I say like I help people to stress less. It's not stress never, it's stress less because it is normal that our bodies are going to be responding to stresses in our lives. There are, we're not cavemen anymore being chased by animals, but if we get bad news, the stress goes up. If we have an interview, we're going to have the stress going up. But the goal here is to have the tools and the tips and tricks to learn how to get yourself out of this stress mode and to stay in what we call the honeymoon place. So the honeymoon place is basically a place where we start to take on new tasks. Maybe we start a new job, so we're really excited. Things are new. We have a lot of satisfaction in what we're doing, contentment, and we're able to incorporate good habits into this area because this is kind of like we learn the right things about how to manage our stress and our burnout levels, and so we incorporate them there. Step 2, so back to step 1, it's a honeymoon place. And this is the place that you want to be in. So you don't mind having a bit of stress going up and down, but like having that good balance. Step 2 is where stress really kicks it in. And we start to see that we have days that are a lot tougher than other days. And they happen to come more often than not. So, where we're talking a full work week, you might have one day that you're feeling good, but you have 4 days that are not feeling good. It starts when you start having, a little bit of heart palpitations and, you're having a harder time getting down from that stress level. Step 3 is chronic stress. This is where you're not living anything but stress. You literally live with stress. And this is what I've lived pretty much most of my life. I used to thrive on stress. I used to go into job interviews telling people, no, stress is not a problem. I thrive on stress. I am the queen of stress. I can manage the stress. But unfortunately, that's actually a pretty bad place to be at because yes, we should be able to manage stress, but to thrive on stress is actually something that's hindering to our physical selves. It causes long-term pain. It causes panic attacks. It causes lack of sexual desire. It causes us to be exhausted all the time. It's actually really not that good at all. And then burnout. Burnout happens, and the symptoms are, things like I mentioned, chronic isolation. I spent so much time away from people. I slept all the time. I felt like I could never get enough sleep. I would be going to bed super early, waking up as late as my alarm clock can get me. I was working, even though I was working from home, I still felt like exhausted all the time. I had digestive problems. I just wanted to be alone all the time. I spent most of my time alone. And when I was in groups of people, I was the last person that was going to say anything. And clearly, guys, I have a lot to say. And then step 5 is habitual burnout. This is something that, I had spent a lot of time in as well. So step 4 and step 5, I spent many, many years in there. And they're literally, the symptoms of burnout are always there. You feel depressed, you feel sad, you feel angry. There is no good feelings in this area. And unfortunately, this is an area that most of us end up spending most of our lives in when we're trying to live those inauthentic lives. So, some of the things that I did to help me, get out of it are some of the things that I want to share with you. But I also want to share some really good tips that, I found that work with, some of my clients. So one, prioritizing your time. So one of the things that I didn't do is I would never prioritize my time. I would prioritize my work time, but I wouldn't prioritize time that would be for me, and the things that I love to do. And so the same way we go about creating a schedule for our work days, one of the things that we need to do is spend time creating time that is going to be for you. So whether it's 30 minutes a day, have you scheduled it in your calendar that you're going to spend time with yourself? Um, One for me, like I said, I prioritize myself in my calendar. I have a routine up here on my wall. I spend time putting in the time that I want to do for self-development, the time that I want to do just for me time, and I prioritize that with my work schedule. Things like meditation, journaling, quiet coffee time, reading, whatever it may be. You have to find what's important to you and what makes you feel good, and create that as a priority. And once it becomes a habit, it becomes a lot easier. Second, physical activity. It's super easy to let our motivation go to hell when we're in the middle of a burnout. But physical activity will allow us to start getting those endorphin flowing, the serotonin, giving us that those happy hormones in our body that is going to help us to be able to reduce the stress naturally, and try to get ourselves back. And so when I saw a health coach, I think it was about almost 10 years ago, because I was in stress like management mode. One of the things that I was allowed to do was just walking. And so I had to stop all workouts because I needed to get my cortisol levels under control. I needed to get my adrenal glands back to being able to function. And I had to take nature walks. And so that's one of the things that I work with my clients now. Physical activity is anything from taking a walk to walking in the forest to taking a brisk jog. It could be walking up and down your stairs in your house. It's getting your body active. Small steps are super important. Nobody's expecting you to become a marathon runner, or a marathon walker, or take away the expectations. And even if it's 15 minutes a day where you're able to get some kind of physical activity into your day, the better that it's going to become, and it's going to be able to create those habits that you need. Clean eating. Clean eating is huge. I'm actually doing a workshop this week where we're going to be exploring food. So if you're not sure about the link, reach out and let me know. But this Sunday is what are we today? What's the date today? We are the 5th. So on the 7th, we are going to be doing this seminar about food, but processed over whole foods, organic versus non-organic. All of these things are things that we have to slowly but surely start incorporating into our lifestyle. And the first thing that I would suggest is cooking at home, because you know what you're putting in your body, starting to eat those whole foods, and just eating it. Nourishing your body nourishes your mind. Therefore, it's going to help you to get control of those negative feelings that you're having. Second, and the actually last, the fourth tip, routines, guys. Routines are super important. I know I mentioned it in prioritizing your time, but the balance that it requires for us to have a routine is super important. Why do you think that we say that kids need their routines, whether it's their sleep routine or their wake up routine or their day-to-day routine? We focus so much on getting our kids to have routines in their lives, but we forget that as adults, it's the same thing. So in order to be able to reduce the amount of stress that you're having a routine helps you, because your brain needs the opportunity to assimilate all the other information. So for us to have a really stable routine, whether it's the time that we wake up in the morning, or the time that we're going to have for self-care, or the time that we're going to have for workout, and the time that we have for work, if this is all laid out neatly for us, our brain is able to basically say, hey, I don't need to think about it anymore because it's all taken care of for me. So I'm going to pay attention to all of the other things that that are coming my way, instead of focusing on what's coming next on my schedule and keeping us in stress mode. And so those are the tips that I have for you when it comes to overcoming burnout, guys. The goal is to, if you do have, a very stressful life or a stressful job, um, the goal is to keep you in the honeymoon phase and giving you that opportunity to, like, have that stress, but be able to take on new tasks, be able to be efficient in your day to day, and not be at a point where you're suffering from depression, sleep disorders, food disorders, mood disorders, everything. And so, yeah, prioritizing your time, making time for yourself, really making sure that you understand that that you are super important and you have to take care of yourself. Second is physical activity, getting your body moving, whether it's taking a walk or if it's doing a little workout. Small steps, guys, big wins. Clean eating, try to incorporate more whole foods, plant-based meals into your lifestyle. The better the food that you're putting in your body, the better it is for your mind. And then lastly is, again, having a great routine, finding yourself, especially sleep routine, right? Sleep is super important for regeneration. If we are having a good routine during the day and then allowing ourselves to go into a good sleep routine at night, I can't even explain how healing sleep is, and we don't get enough of it. So that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me on my little podcast here. I hope that you found this information valuable. If ever you have any questions or you want to find out more about any of the programs that I offer or any of the workshops that I'm giving, please feel free to reach out. I'm always here to chat. And that's it. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I really look forward to chatting with you guys soon. Have a great one. Bye.